Picture this. It's 2600 BC in the sun-baked city of Ur in Mesopotamia. And there's a queen buried in her tomb, and sitting beside her is a board game. It's called the Royal Game of Ur, a strategic battle of luck and skill that players believe could predict the future or guide souls to the afterlife. Now, I'm not saying that I believe in that particular religious tenet or anything like that, but it points to the fact that games have been a part of society for a very long time. If you fast forward 4,500 years from that time back in 2600 BC, we can find in every corner from Egyptian pharaohs to pyramids to Greek warriors competing in Olympic games. Games have been a part of every civilization in history. In fact, here's the thing. I can't find evidence of a single culture in the history of the world that didn't have games. So some people have asked me why I, as someone who's formally trained as an academic, even though my channel here is not focused upon formal academic study, it's more just a conversation with people who care about the role of games and treasure hunting and treasure seeking in life, metaphorically and literally. And people have asked me, why is it that I am devoting time and energy to something that seems to be more about child's play and playfulness and games? Well, it's because play and games are far more fundamental than many people realize. They are a centerpiece of many cultures. They are as fundamental as fire or language in some ways when we look at different cultures around the world. It's amid games and play that we learn, we grow, we develop, we cultivate the skills, the character, the courage that's important beyond gameplay. And so that's one of the reasons why I have this channel. And I wanted to talk about this more broadly. I was just thinking about this today, and I thought I'd share, here are the 5 things that, the 5 reasons why I think this is so valuable, so important. And beyond the fact that I find it really interesting, and there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of fun and leisure time and exploring that with others. But the first one is play develops problem solving. It develops in intelligence. It helps cultivate your intelligence, your socio-emotional intelligence. It helps cultivate your motor skills with children. There's a playfulness that happens. You see this almost naturally between parents and caretakers and children. There's a kind of playfulness, very simple kinds of games, even things like peekaboo and other kinds of movement challenges where a parent moves a little bit away and challenges the child to crawl toward them. There's a kind of playfulness and a gamefulness. It's also fascinating that when you find caretakers starting to interact with children, they immediately step into the world of playfulness and play and games, formal and informal, that there is something that we understand that's really fundamental about it. But what's so intriguing to me is that we sometimes think that we grow out of it, that you do playfulness and games at one point of your life and now it's no longer needed. But the reality is it is valuable throughout life, from the first day that we breathe to our last breath. Games and play can be a really meaningful and important part of our life, and they help cultivate those different kinds of skills and abilities. And so a second thing I would say is that games provide a safe environment to practice, to engage in cooperative efforts, competitive efforts, risk-taking, but controlled risk-taking. So it's a place where we can practice, and practice is incredibly important. In fact, out of all the research over the years about what results in people learning and growing, we know that practice with feedback is fundamental to getting better at pretty much anything in life. And so games provide places for that to happen. And when I use the word games, I mean it quite broadly. It can be everything from a board game to a conversation game to a treasure hunt to an alternate reality game and all sorts of other things as well. The third one is this: games turn every effort into a struggle, but one with purpose and meaning. It's a way to practice striving for a goal. And goals are incredibly important in life. We are wired for quests and missions. In fact, I've often said when people ask me about the different roles that I've served in my life professionally, I often tell them I'm more interested in quests and missions over titles and positions. Now, it doesn't mean that I run away from titles, but it's the quest and the mission that really compels me. And that's true for people throughout their life, that purpose and meaning really matter. and understanding that you're doing something that can be a blessing or a benefit to others, or it can accomplish something that's good or true or beautiful. And and so games are places to practice and experiment with a purposeful struggle and a struggle toward an end. The fourth thing is that games are a wonderful time to engage in community and collaboration. We learn to interact with one another through games and through playfulness. It's where we develop shared rituals, a shared sense of connection. We learn how to work with people we disagree with. We learn about the challenges of defeat and failure, of success and disappointments. We learn about a lot of those things in the context of games and play, but in a little bit safer kind of environment or place than if you were playing in the middle of traffic. So games are a great place for a kind of community building and building connection. I've been honored and blessed to travel to different parts of the world. I've been to Southeast Asia a few times and to Europe and some other places. And when I find myself interacting with children in other countries where I don't speak their language, I find that we almost always revert to some form of game or playfulness. Some form, even if it's just a little bit of hiding from one another in a kind of peekaboo type of experience, or it could be soccer or some other game. And it's almost like a universal language in a way. It's a way for us to build a connection with one another, even if we can't communicate through words. And that is a powerful part of games and play. I think that perhaps that's why it plays an important role in society, like in American society. Many people wonder about whether we've overblown our emphasis upon sports, for example, professional athletics. And while we can certainly have critiques about how much money is spent and other things around it, the fundamental notion of games and play and sport, I think, has something to do with this sense of community, which is probably why it reveals itself even in small towns and in different places, that people can get just as passionate and excited at a middle school game as they can at a professional version of that same sport. And so games play a really important role in this sense of community. And then the fifth one is that games give us, let's say, a kind of freedom with boundaries, just enough structure to be challenging, but enough freedom for you to be creative. Games are actually a place where you can test the boundaries. You can begin to learn what it's like to operate within boundaries and just push right up to the edge and maybe even step over them a little bit, which is why it's fascinating that most of us, when we think about kind of the morality of gameplay, there are certainly, you want to bring your character with you into a game and be a person above reproach, you want to reflect your core convictions and your character when you're in a game and when you're out of a game. And yet even for people of very high character, and they're people of great honesty and so forth, within a game, there is a little room for you to play around with the boundaries of the rules of the game, understanding that it's different than a regular interaction or environment in the world beyond this kind of play sphere that we have. And so it's a place for us to learn about boundaries. And those are just 5 of probably 50 reasons why games and play are important in our life and in our society and our culture. And that's why I have this channel. That's why I have a lot of videos on things like cognitive biases and logical fallacies, but I'm tying them to this notion of testing them out and using them within the context of games and play, so then we can learn to use them in those other real-world environments as well. So I hope this gives you a little bit more background about the why of this channel and what we're doing, but maybe even if this is the first video that you've seen on my channel, that you'll find something a little bit useful and maybe an invitation for you to embrace a little bit more gamefulness and play in your life, whether you are 25 or 95.